Hey y'all, how y'all doing? How y'all doing on this Monday? On this Monday, how y'all doing? We learned about nonprofits today, y'all. How to start your nonprofit. Okay, hey Mimi, how you doing? Coach Ari, girl, look, we can go ahead and get started, honey. You coming in early. Let me get my questions up. I hope everybody is having a good day per usual. Oh, you love your
Hi.
hair color, girl. You look different. I
Oh
love your hair
yes.
color. That's too
Thank you.
cute. Yes, ma'am. You better do that shit pop on. Yes,
How are
ma'am.
you?
I'm good, girl. How are you?
Girl, I'm good. It's a Monday. People trying to try me today, but I said y'all are not gonna get me there.
Oh, I
I'm gonna
feel
try
you.
to remain positive. I got things to do.
Most definitely, I definitely understand that. So look, I usually would just tag the like y'all names at the bottom. Do you want me to tag this name or you want me to tag your business page name?
You can tag this one. That's fine.
Tag this one. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Perfect. All right, y'all. Let me go ahead and tag her page on here so you guys can follow her and then we can get started. Give me 1 second.
You are good.
Underscore and underscore. No. Okay. Uh-oh. Okay. So while that's getting loaded, because I don't want to be just sitting here on silence and folks are like, oh my gosh, it's so
You're good.
quiet.
I know now I started looking down at my notes, so I got distracted, but it's all good.
Okay, perfect. All right, y'all. So we is about to go ahead and get started. I am Coach Lay, and of course, you guys know, I am the founder of the Adulting Crew, and we are in the business of helping aspiring entrepreneurs understand the foundation of entrepreneurship so they can build a solid business foundation and give them the confidence and clarity to, start their business and, actually feel confident about it and not go through the whole scary stages that we normally go through. So
Hmm.
on Mondays, I interview amazing entrepreneurs that I've met along my journey. And today we are going to be speaking with Coach Ari, who is going to give us the insights on the nonprofit world, how to start nonprofits and everything like that. So if you could just go ahead, give us a little background information on you, and then we can go ahead and get started.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
So like she said, my name is Coach Ari. I'm actually in Cleveland, Ohio. We're in two different states. We can talk later about how we met if you don't know. But so a little bit about me. I actually currently, in addition to running my own nonprofit, actually work for a nonprofit as well. So it's nice to kind of be on both ends of things.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also love working with kids. So for the last 7 years in particular, I've been working with a program where I teach sixth grade boys. I
Mm-hmm.
had been teaching language arts, but for the last 4 years in particular, I really shifted to teaching entrepreneurship to my students. But yeah, entrepreneur, educator, Jill of all trades. Thought I was going to make candles at some point. That's just that entrepreneurial aspect of me. But I'm
Uh-huh.
everything.
I like that. I never heard of a Jill of all trades. I like that instead of
Mm-hmm.
saying Jack. That's cute. Very catchy. I
See?
like that. I like
um,
that.
I'm trying to think.
Perfect.
Oh, so then obviously, if you look behind me here on the wall, that's the name of my nonprofit. It's called Motivate. So Motivate actually is an acronym. So it stands for mentoring others through inspiration, validation, action, teaching, and empowerment. So the overall goal of Motivate is to be able to provide different resources and programming. And even opportunities for people within our communities that maybe they would not have normally had access to.
Mm-hmm.
And then especially when we're thinking about students, really providing those key foundation that they need, whether it be in entrepreneurship specifically or certain life skills to kind of help to prepare and launch them into their future. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. So So I guess we could just go ahead and give a little background information on how we actually met. Um, because this is our second time going live. We went live on your page, right? The first time?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, okay. Yeah. So we went live on your page first time. So okay, start all over. So we are both a part of Jeremy Anderson's Next Level Speakers Academy, and we were at the conference this past summer. And what was it? Oh, that's what it was. I had got up and asked a question about
Mm-hmm.
how entrepreneurship can tie into the education system these days, because with me now in the role in the space of being an entrepreneur, when I was in high school, I wish that was something that I would have learned
Mm-hmm.
now. So I got up and asked the question, and then Ariana had pulled me to the side afterwards, and she was like, we need to talk because what you're doing is something similar to what I'm doing, and we need to just connect. And once after the conference was over and we actually was able to connect, we actually like found out that what she has going on, what I have going on is like all the same thing. So it's just like
Yeah.
how we've like found our entrepreneur bestie in a sense, because we both were like on the same page of what we wanted to do, of how we wanted to change the whole shift in mindset of when it comes to the youth and the education system. So
Yeah.
it was really, yeah, it was really a fun experience meeting you at the conference, and then just actually being able to form a relationship outside of that,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of people be like, okay, I'm gonna hit you up, and then you never hear
And
from them
it doesn't
again.
happen. Yep.
Never hear from
But
them
I will say
again.
too, it was one of those things like you were talking, and I remember at one point sitting there because you hear a lot of people. I think in that particular room that we were in, they want to be a motivational speaker, but I think that our gifts and our talents added to that is
Mm-hmm.
putting in that entrepreneurship piece. And at that point, I wasn't hearing that as much. I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna kind of get in where I fit in and
Yeah.
figure out how it's gonna work. And then so when you answer or ask that question, it was like this light bulb went off. Because I'm like, yes. I'm like, okay, so her and I need to talk. I feel like, and then especially with the organization that I work for,
Mm-hmm.
we get so many free resources that we automatically provide to educators that are centered around entrepreneurship education. So in my
Mm-hmm.
head, I'm just like, look, even if for some reason her and I do not connect, I want to be able to offer these to her for free. So, if she's able to use it, if she doesn't need to use it, just more so if it's sparking an idea, at least you have access to it.
Yeah, and let me tell you, that information definitely was helpful, because I ended up getting into some other program about teaching entrepreneurship, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it happened. I don't think I would have gotten to that area if it wasn't for you, because like the links that you sent me, then I started clicking on some other stuff, and then it just led me to something else, and then yeah,
Yes.
girl. So I was like all over the place, like, oh my gosh, this is really like entrepreneur heaven. Like it got everything. Like the way they break it down so for you to teach it for kids is just like, oh, okay,
Yes.
I like that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I'm happy to
So
help.
I appreciate you. Look, I love help. I love support, all of that. I definitely love to, help and support people whenever I can too. So
Yeah.
so how did you know entrepreneurship is a part of your future? Like, since you said that you work for a nonprofit now, was
Mhm.
entrepreneurship something that was in your mind like early on as a child or a teenager, or was it something that you got into as you got older working in the nonprofit?
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm not sure if I know exactly when the shift happened in terms of
Mm-hmm.
knowing for sure that entrepreneurship was going to be part of my future, but I was first introduced to entrepreneurship when I was 12.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom had seen something for this organization that had been in Cleveland called E-City, which stood for Entrepreneurship Connecting, Inspiring, and Teaching Youth. So
Mm-hmm.
the whole organization's mission or purpose was to essentially teach entrepreneurship to students. And then at the end of their programs, they essentially would have like some type of a business plan competition. So they're literally teaching you at the age of 12 or 13 or whatever how to formulate a business. What does that look like? Are you creating a product? Are you offering a service? And then they partner with this organization called Nifty. So if anybody's interested in entrepreneurship, definitely search for Nifty. It's the National Foundation for Teaching Entrepreneurship. Huge organization. So one of the awesome things was when I joined that biz camp, I was actually supposed to be 13, But because I was 12, turning 13 as a freshman in high school, they waived it and were like, oh, you're fine. So I competed, did the summer basic biz camp, won that business plan competition, did their advanced biz camp, competed, won that one. And then it also then afforded me the opportunity to go to New York and compete and do like their national foundation stuff. So for me, that was just like, oh, okay. I didn't know that all this was out here and available. And I think when you're traveling, especially as a kid, and you start to see other people that are around your same age that are working towards some of these same goals, but with a different product or different service that they're offering, it's like, wow, okay, like clearly there's a lot more outside of the bubble that I'm used to being in, right? So my business at that time, I made these, and I wish I should have had one actually out here, but I made these custom design like tissue holders. So I would like make them for different organizations and things like that. And I would, little pop-up shops, I would sell them. And my business name was Monet Enterprise. So like in my logo, it was just like the ME. So I would say designed by me, and Monet is my middle name. So, I had my whole little thing going on. But I knew how to sew. So for me, that was like really easy to apply something that I knew into a tangible product to be able to sell. I didn't keep with Monet Enterprise, but as I continue, like, throughout school and things like that, there was one thing that kind of always became a consistent for me, or a constant for me, and that was working with kids. So once I got to college, and I was a part of an organization that taught or emphasized the importance of literacy within youth, and they were a nonprofit organization, and they were making these impact with students, and we were having these summer camps. And a situation occurred, and I decided to step away from partnering with them. But it was one of those decisions where I was just like, wait a minute, Ariana, you're upset or you're irritated by the way in which things are being ran. Why not just start it yourself? Like, you know how to create a business plan. You know what's necessary. And thank the Lord, we all have access to the internet, because that will also answer a lot of questions for you, right?
Most definitely.
Ideally, you want to be able to have some type of a business coach or consultant to run certain things by. But let's also be honest, sometimes that's not always possible, or as easy to reach out to them consistently as you want to be. So are you going to complain and just say, I can't do it? Or, utilize the resources that you have at your disposal? So for me, I really knew that my impact, I wanted it to be for kids in particular. But I also wanted to be able to impact our communities though, right? So one of the things that I realized is, especially working now in a private school and having gone to a public school, how many resources are not provided to public school students. And then if you get even more specific and you look at what's afforded to students within our communities traditionally, there's a lot of things that they're not being prepared for. So talking about financial literacy, talking about how to apply for a job, how to prepare for an interview, not just walking in and thinking that, well, I can answer whatever questions that, they're going to throw my way. Are you asking them questions though? Are you being intentional? I don't care if you truly do not know or care about what their answer is. You at least need to appear as if you came prepared and are ready to have those conversations, and that they know that you're going to, actually get the job done once you actually get in the door. So all these things kind of culminated with me then wanting to start Motivate. So it took me a minute to get the name together. I knew I wanted something in terms of bringing motivation and inspiration to other people. But I think my biggest thing that I struggled with was figuring out, how did I want that impact to be seen or shown? And I think a lot of times we tend to overlook the gifts that we already have, and we're thinking like we need to reinvent the wheel. And I think as I was teaching with my 6th grade boys, I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm teaching entrepreneurship. I'm creating curriculum and content. Why am I not utilizing this as part of my platform for Motivate? Like I'm in situations where I'm motivating or I'm coaching or I'm inspiring friends or coworkers or students randomly that may not be mine specifically that I'm working with or teaching. Why not utilize those gifts? So now we got Motivate.
Yes. I like that. So with that, what made you decide to start a nonprofit versus just doing an LLC with your business? Because, there's plenty of things like with me, I decided to do mine as an LLC and do it as an online academy in a sense. So what made you choose the nonprofit route?
Yep. So for a few reasons. For one, I knew that my impact was less about trying to make money off of it and more in the sense of I want the impact to be felt. And with a
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit, you have an easier time having access to grants and a lot of different funding opportunities than a
Mm-hmm.
traditional for-profit company has to deal with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then especially when you're doing something in the realm of like education or working with students, that's like a hot commodity for people that are just looking to give money away, that maybe they have the funds, but they don't have an organization or the means to be able to really create the impact that they want seen. So
Mm-hmm.
they find different organizations to partner with to give these funds to, so that those organizations can create that impact that they want made. So there was that piece of it. Now, one common misconception that I will say, just because I'm not looking for a profit necessarily to make from the organization, doesn't mean that the organization won't pay me.
Right. Okay.
So the way that goes is a little bit different, but we can kind of get to that in a second. So, and then another factor within things for having a nonprofit, I'm tax exempt.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two ways technically you can have a nonprofit. You can have a registered nonprofit but not be tax exempt, because that's a different form that you have to submit to the IRS,
Mm-hmm.
which means you have that nonprofit status. However, you still have to pay taxes on things.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can have a nonprofit and then you can apply for that your 501c3 status, so that tax exemption status, and not have to pay state and federal taxes.
Okay.
You still need to have everything documented, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to pay those taxes. And then anybody that makes a donation to you with you having a tax exempt status, it's like a tax write-off to an extent, because it's like a charitable donation that they're able to give to the organization. So
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, that was also kind of like a selling point, in the sense of I am not naturally like a salesperson per se. But
Mm-hmm.
if I'm able to talk to somebody and say, hey, if you donate though, you can get some money off your taxes. Like, it's going to a
Right.
good cause. Like, you gonna say
Yeah.
no?
Yeah. Most
Especially when
definitely.
the mission and the why aligns with what so many people are interested in or passionate about or see
Mm-hmm.
the need for change or improvement in, it makes
Mm-hmm.
having those conversations though a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Okay, so see, I never really understood or really knew the background of the nonprofit industry, because I was just probably just like a lot of people who, when they hear about nonprofits, it's just like, okay, well, you don't make any money, and then there's like a lot of stipulations on how to make money.
Yep,
So
it is.
I definitely appreciate you breaking that down for me, because I was actually thinking about in a sense, kind of changing my structure to a
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit. But I really didn't know exactly if that was the route I should go with for my business. So I was kind of like up on the fence with it. So I just kind of like put it to the side. It's like, I'll get back to it. But now that kind of makes a little bit more sense when it comes down to, especially with like you said, if you're
Yeah.
doing something where you're trying to in the education field and realm of everything like that. So
Yep. And
yeah.
so like one of the things too between like the LLC and like the nonprofit, your LLC, so basically the more successful a business is, the more that business owner or their business partners can make money, right? Based off of the amount of profits that's coming into the organization. Well, as a nonprofit, the funding structure is a little bit differently. Like your salary, whether it be for like the executive director position, or any employees or any board members, that's already put into your operating costs.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless as to whether or not I get like maybe a $1 million donation, just because I got the $1 million donation, that doesn't mean that my salary is increasing. I have a
Mm-hmm.
set operating budget that regardless, that's how much I should be making. That
Mm-hmm.
$1 million is just now just going into the organization that I can use to do additional programming. As a nonprofit, you also have the opportunity to be able to essentially give funds to another charitable organization as well. So again, like how you talked about, there's certain stipulations that nonprofits have to follow. Yeah. So it's
Is
just
it
like,
a lot?
it's enough. So just in the sense of, because there's like a lot of hoops I feel like you have to jump through, but I understand the why,
Yeah.
right? Because it's easy for somebody to say or file paperwork to be a nonprofit and have taxes and status, but will
Mm-hmm.
they be able to manage that money? And
Mm-hmm.
realistically, what are they doing with the money once they receive it? Like, or were you
Mm-hmm.
just, making it seem as if you had these grandiose ideas and goals just to be able to get this money to come in? So even when you apply for grants and things like that, and you have a grant where they want to see, what are you doing with these funds? You
Mm-hmm.
can't just write a letter and say, hey, can I get $100,000 because I want to do a program? They want to
Mm-hmm.
know, okay, well, what's the demographic of the students that you're working with? Why is this program so important? how much money do you actually need? So like creating a budget and having a budget is so, so, so important, because let's say I find somebody that has a lot of funds and I want to do some type of programming where I want every single one of my students to have access to a laptop. They might be willing to cover that. But if I don't include that in the budget that I send to them, that's not even going to be on their radar at all. So it's almost like I'm losing out potentially on certain opportunities that can further impact the group of students or the communities that I'm really trying to make a difference in.
Okay.
So it's a give and
That
take.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that sounds like it's pros and cons to it, definitely. But
Yeah.
that's with any business structure, technically,
Mm-hmm.
because as you grow, like you said, things definitely change. So how do you start a nonprofit? Are there any like prerequisites that need to be done or you need to have in mind before you start a nonprofit?
Yeah, so I feel like there's like my prerequisites, and then there's what each state is going to tell you. The
Mm-hmm.
one thing I will say, definitely check to see what each state's guidelines are, because they may be a little bit different.
Okay.
So if this doesn't fully apply for you, if you're not in Ohio, I'm sorry, just look on your state's website. I promise you, it'll tell you everything
Right.
on the bill. But I think before you even go through that full process of filling out the paperwork, make sure it's something that you really want to do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and outside of that, you essentially need to create that business plan. So who is your target market? What is the mission? What's the why behind it? What type of impact are you trying to make? What's the goal that you're trying to reach? Once you have that part essentially figured out, that's helpful. One of the other things with the nonprofit is, compared to an LLC, a nonprofit has a board essentially that you report to. So even though I have started Motivate, technically I have a board of directors that I report to. So if there are
Mm-hmm.
certain things that I am doing as the executive director of my organization that maybe are not aligned with the mission that we set forth, I mean, I can get in trouble by my board because I'm not following those same guidelines, if that makes
Ooh.
sense. So then when you get through like the official part, so with having, sorry, let me go back. With having a board, you have to have your board, or at least an idea of who's going to be on your board prior to you filing that paperwork, because the government's going to want to know. They
Okay.
won't necessarily ask all their names,
Mm-hmm.
but if they requesting type of documentation, you have to be able to show that you have people on your board. I
Mm-hmm.
do believe on my initial application, I had to have 2 or 3 names listed,
Mm-hmm.
and showing what their positions were. So one of the things to consider, especially if you're starting off brand new and like your organization is small, you're going to have one person in several different positions. That's fine. Like, it's not abnormal for a nonprofit to start off that way. Most of the times I feel like I'm wearing all the hats, so it's all
Mm-hmm.
right. So once you have that kind of figured out, you have all like I guess I'll say the prereqs that you need to
Mm-hmm.
be able to really start to file that paperwork. This part sounds easy, but it can be a little tedious, is figuring out what name you can actually call your nonprofit. Don't get too set in a name if you have not checked it against your state's like directory, essentially, of different organization or business names.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's taken, you're going to have to
That's
try
it.
something. Yep.
Right.
Right. So either you need to add something, take something away, make it an
Yeah.
acronym, something that needs to differentiate that from everything else that's out there. Because there
Mm-hmm.
are other organizations that are called Motivate or have something in regards to Motivate in it, but no other organization has this acronym. So that's why I'm
Mm-hmm.
able to still utilize the name. And the mission is also different from those organizations.
Okay.
Um, so you have the name. Once you have that, within the state of Ohio, you have to essentially identify who is the agent over the account. So for me,
Mm-hmm.
that would be me. So if anything were to happen, who's a person that they reach out to? Who's a person that's essentially responsible or the main contact?
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're going to ask you again about, like, who's on your board of directors? What position do they hold? You also have to then create your bylaws, which, whew, that took some time.
I was gonna say anything that I've heard of bylaws is I don't, it
That took
just sounds
time.
long.
It did. It did. And one thing I will say is, again, the internet is helpful, because I was able to see and find some initial like blueprints and examples to follow, to be
Mm-hmm.
able to then just customize into what I would need and want for my organization. So it helped. Now, with everything else, if it's not perfect the first time, y'all, it's fine. You
Mm-hmm.
can always amend and make changes to your bylaws and have the board approve them as you get more established within your organization. So if that's the holdup, try not to overthink it. I know, easier said than done.
Yeah.
And then the last piece in terms of officially filing, and this is just for your nonprofit status, not tax
Mm-hmm.
exempt status, because those are two different things.
Okay.
You actually file your articles of incorporation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in Ohio it's like $100 to file, same amount as if you were to file for an LLC.
Mm-hmm.
And you're submitting all that information to them. It may take a few weeks for them to respond back. Now, if you want to obtain your 501c3 status, your tax exempt status, then that's a whole different application that you have to submit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the cost of that's like $250 or something like that. But I did some
Mm-hmm.
research and it said that states for the application can range from like $250 all the way up to $800, depending on the organization, depending on the state,
Okay
which is
then.
insane.
Yeah.
But if you want that tax exempt status, then you got to file the paperwork. One
Yeah.
thing I can say is if you're able to get a grant, that can help you with some of those costs.
Oh, so you can
Because
get grants to help
for
do all of
operational
your.
costs, mm-hmm.
I might need to get
Yep.
into the
You just
nonprofit
have to
world.
be very intentional about looking to see, what are they looking for when providing funding. If
Mm-hmm.
they're open to providing funding that's helping with the overall organization, then that's exactly what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
If they're only looking for funding that's supporting specific programming in a specific market, then you might have a little bit of a harder time trying to obtain that grant and finessing it to be applicable. Because again, you still have to report on everything. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how much money I get, I have to show what I'm spending that money on.
Okay. So, what was I about to say? Oh, about the grants. Is
Mm-hmm.
as far as is there like a particular section that you go to when you're looking for a grant, or is there like a nonprofit website where everybody go and look for different grants, or do you just search, like grants in Ohio for educations or things like that? Like, how do you find your grants?
Yep. So that's still partially work in progress, but some sites that I have looked at, it's like grants.gov. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Now there you're able to definitely sort based off of, what's like your actual niche market. So what does that look like? Who are you impacting? What type of nonprofit have you actually incorporated? So like mine is underneath the category of like education essentially,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm trying to provide different programs and resources and experiences for youth and then the others in the community. Um, so this kind of depends on that end. In Cleveland, we have like the Cleveland Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So with the Cleveland Foundation, they essentially are a nonprofit that offers grants to a lot of different organizations. So they
Mm-hmm.
have a list of grants that's even on their website that you can apply for as well and be able to get some of that funding from.
Okay. Okay, I like that. That's very beneficial, especially with census in state. So can anybody do a nonprofit? Are there any restrictions for it? Like, do you have to be education or like who can do a nonprofit? Anybody?
Yeah, anybody can start a nonprofit. Now,
Mm-hmm.
it depends on what the purpose and again the mission of your nonprofit is. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I wrote this down somewhere. For a nonprofit in particular, it has to like fit within the categories of being like a charitable organization. It can be like based like a religious organization, a school, something that supports like foster kids or animals and things like that. There are
Mm-hmm.
certain banks that even are nonprofits. They may not have a tax exempt status, but they are nonprofits. So when you think about things like schools and churches, those are probably the most popular nonprofit entities that you're going to think about or hear from.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but again, it's like when we talk about those stipulations and restrictions, for instance, I may have very specific political views, right? I may have certain candidates or parties that I support. Well, I can personally support them, but my nonprofit can't endorse any of them.
Oh yeah, that is right. I
So if
think
I
I
had an
saw that
LLC,
before.
that's a little bit different. But my
Yeah.
nonprofit, I can't do that. Especially because when you're thinking about a nonprofit, you're thinking about more so how is a large group of people or a community really being positively impacted,
Mm-hmm.
and you never know where different people within that community stand in their political views and things like that. So if a whole organization that's supposed to be geared towards helping everyone within the community has now made a very strong position on one political group or organization, that can cause conflict, especially if you have people that are funder or excuse me that are giving you money essentially or are donors for your organization.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're a strong Republican, let's say, for instance, and I choose to support Democratic candidates and I have my organization support that, well, that's going to be a conflict.
Yeah.
They're not going to give no money no more. I
Okay.
don't want to lose out on funders.
I know that's right. I do not want to lose my business funds. I know that's right. Okay. Okay. I definitely will be getting with the program too on that.
Yeah.
So since you said that you guys, so you said nonprofit, you get paid salary, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
that comes out of your operating costs.
so do you decide on what your salary pay is going to be, or how does that work?
That is a trick question. Right now I'm saying yes because I'm small. However, right now I am not necessarily collecting a salary for my nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
Once I get certain other grants coming in, so like even when I submit my budget for grants, I'll have
Mm-hmm.
an operating budget that will be submitted to them, so that they can see if you're giving me, let's say, $100,000 as a grant,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'm saying 10% of that is going towards my salary.
Mm-hmm.
Right, or however much I choose for it to be. But one of the biggest things, and then even the IRS can potentially audit organizations for this. It has to make sense. If the executive director is making significantly more than the organization is bringing in, and in terms of the impact that's been able to make, you're going to get flagged. Because
Mm.
again, the whole goal is it's not supposed to be to make money. It's supposed to be
Right.
able to create that impact, right?
Okay.
And then as well within that, when you have a board established, your board should really be voting on what your particular salary is. Now I
Mm-hmm.
can have a hand in or say anything in regards to maybe what my vice president is making or what a financial officer might be making, but I shouldn't have any direct hand in determining and finalizing what my salary is. Conflict of interest.
Mm.
So
That makes sense. That definitely is a conflict of interest because you definitely want to pay yourself right. Okay.
mhm.
Definitely
And
want
I
to pay
will
yourself
say,
right.
depending on how strict, like let's say you had to get audited, depending on how strict they are, you're really also not supposed to have a family member on the board that's making that decision either in regards to how much you should get paid. Because of
Mm.
course they're gonna be biased too.
I was gonna ask that. Like, would you get flagged if you wanted to create your board with just family members? Like, do you have to,
No.
does your board, okay, so you can make your board whoever, however you want it
Yep.
to be. Oh, okay, cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The
Okay.
biggest thing is you don't want there to be a very obvious line, or say you don't want there to be a line of a conflict of interest, and then if you have like a business partnership with somebody,
Mm-hmm.
you probably are not going to fare well with having them on the board because that can be seen as potentially challenging in the future,
Mm.
especially if somehow they're making money off of what the organization is doing in some way.
Oh, okay. Okay. That makes sense. Because definitely, if you put all your family on the board, it's like, okay, we're going to get paid this. You're going to get paid this. And then we're going to write it up real good and send it out to the
Mm-hmm.
people. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you have to get audit? So when does the auditing of the business start? Like, does it just automatically start once you start applying for grants and receiving them, or is it once you get like to a certain status of money coming in of donations and I guess grants as well?
I haven't had to experience that as of yet. I mean, you still have to
Mm-hmm.
file taxes. So even though
Okay.
you are, tax exempt from things, because again, that's what I said, you need to keep track of like your records. Because even
Mm-hmm.
if you have money coming in, the government wants to see that. And think about on this end, if I have money coming in because this huge organization or this person has awarded me this lump sum of money and they're
Mm-hmm.
reporting it on their taxes, but I'm not reporting having received it, that's going to
Mm.
be a real quick flag about something ain't right.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
how is this person putting your organization down to get a tax write-off, but you haven't claimed that you received any money from them? So where's the
Mm.
money at?
Right. And you already know they finna show their paperwork first. I paid.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my receipt.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
cool. So I think, yeah, so you definitely told me all the perks of like owning a nonprofit and everything like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Okay, I just didn't want to make sure I didn't answer that question since we had already went through it. So what do you have in the works coming up in the future for Motivate, which your nonprofit?
Ooh, child. Well, it's always a lot. It's always a lot. Like I said, right now my team is very small, so it's a blessing on one end, but and I think you can probably even attest to this, like when you are an entrepreneur, your brain is always thinking about, oh, wait, I could do this too, or oh, I can add this, or oh, I really see this happening.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
sometimes, we can get a little bit ahead of ourselves
Mm-hmm.
because we're trying to plan for like 5 or 6 different projects and not fully committing to some projects that are either in the works or that can even further be expanded, right?
Yeah.
So like I said, right now I've been teaching entrepreneurship to my students. So
Mm-hmm.
since I already have a partnership with the school that I work with, for that program, right now I'm working on getting some grants so that I can further expand my partnership with that school so that I
Mm-hmm.
can do a lot more with those students that I work with, which would be awesome. In addition to that, I'm really working on really building out my curriculum, because
Mm-hmm.
I know that eventually I am going to be in more of a position where, as much as I really do love teaching and working with students, I think there's also a lot of different opportunities where you have different educators, young adults, community members that also want to be able to create some of that impact in terms of teaching entrepreneurship or teaching like a life skills class, or
Mm-hmm.
even mentoring others and maybe don't know the how.
Mm-hmm.
So with my curriculum guide or my programming guide, is providing you those tools and resources that you need to be able to implement some of that curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, it's further growing my reach. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like the trainer. Like I'm teaching you and providing you everything that you need to know so
Mm-hmm.
that this can be successful. You can still reach out to me if needed. We can have, schedule a consultation, whatever the case may be, to ensure that, your why and like the mission and things like that is really fulfilled and it's seen. So
Perfect.
there's that. I'm trying to think. I feel like I'm forgetting something really big. So again, the entrepreneur part of me, I've been working on like a podcast with a friend, trying to
Oh.
see more, I guess, in the limelight with certain things so that people
Mm-hmm.
see me and really kind of see what I'm trying to do more.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel like, Cleveland is very small. I feel like everybody that lives in any city probably says that about their own city, but I feel like Cleveland is small in the sense of I am ready to have my impact and reach go beyond Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was even one like the awesome things. Like when we connected at the conference, we're like, okay, well, we can even maybe do like this program where
Yep.
like in the summer, like, we're teaching entrepreneurship and like we can expand like the age group of students that we work with because I'm used to working with this group of students and I'm used to working with this group of students, but I'm comfortable working with whatever group of students
Right.
and really creating that impact and providing them with different things, to
Mm-hmm.
help them to launch their businesses or putting them in different positions. So a whole 360 moment. So I'm excited to see what that's going to look like. I've been trying to plan out a curriculum to have a summer camp.
Mm-hmm.
And within that summer camp, I wanted to be focused on like literacy for one, because
Mm-hmm.
we know, especially with our students, sometimes
We need
they
it.
say, well, I don't like to read. And I'm a big proponent of, I don't think it's that you don't like to read. I think it's that you don't like what you are reading.
Mm-hmm.
And now how can I expose you to some other resources and books and things like that, or ways that you can still get that knowledge from these books in
Mm-hmm.
without the traditional sense that you're used to getting it in from school. So that's another program right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the summer camp as well, having like that STEM or STEAM focus, because again,
Mm-hmm.
hey, Demont, because again, with that STEM or STEAM focus, that's another big hot commodity with educators, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that when people are looking to give money to schools, having that focus on like science, technology, engineering, math, the arts,
Yeah.
some of those areas that kids are not necessarily always as prone to get into, but is really important for them to learn more about, especially the way
Mm-hmm.
that our economy and things like that are going overall. So
Well, yeah, definitely moving
yeah.
into the technology world. Well, we
Yes.
already in it. It's just getting more
A whole
advanced.
nother
So,
level.
yeah, so that is something definitely that's definitely gonna be beneficial. See, look, when you were talking about our program, I was just thinking like, man, we definitely need to go ahead and like start doing that because you could teach we could split down the middle. You teach the whole adulting stages, being on point with your business, everything like that. I teach the
Yes.
entrepreneur stage. Like, Okay.
Yes. Okay, you know what?
We need,
We're not talking about it. We're at the planning and implementation piece.
I was
Because
just about to say.
here's one thing I think that COVID has taught all of us. You do not need to be in the same place to be able to receive information.
Yeah.
Zoom has been huge. So we're not gonna tell y'all all of our details right now because we on live and y'all gonna take it and run with it. But you know, we're gonna record some webinars and we're gonna get our courses together.
And we're finna
And
kill
that's
it.
it.
Look, we're definitely finna kill it because that is definitely something that is like truly, truly needed. Like
Yes.
in all seriousness, it really is needed. Yeah, we're gonna have to definitely come up with something. I'm ready to
Yes.
start touring now. Look, as I'm sitting here thinking, like my mind going already. Okay, so look, yeah, okay.
Girl, because as
So
quiet as it's kept, I had a moment today and I was just like, you know, Ariana, you are in this position right now at your 9 to 5 because you are learning a lot. You're picking up on different things that you can also apply and utilize either in your business or further on in your career. I'm like, don't stress. I'm like, don't, I had to tell myself, like, don't stress about the little stuff. Because in a minute, you're not gonna have no traditional 9 to 5. You may be in Atlanta this week for something. You might be in DC the next week for something else. Florida next week for
mm-hmm.
another conference or webinar or whatever the case may be. Because I feel like what we have to offer, though, that impact is far too important to just think and feel like it's only meant to be in the city that we are located in currently.
Yeah, I'm definitely when we finish, I'm definitely gonna hit you up because I was talking to my
Yes.
advisor from college about something
Mm-hmm.
that I wanted to do. So yeah, I'm gonna definitely tell you about that and then get your input on that. So in closing, if anybody wanted to work with you, donate, partner with you in regards to your nonprofit, exactly, how do you want them to get in contact with you and how can they get in contact with you as well?
Yep. So a few different ways. So in regards to my nonprofit in particular, my website is motivate to the number two inspire.org.
Mm-hmm.
My Instagram for my business is motivate_to inspire. There's a link in my bios that shows you exactly how you can donate to the organization. Again, it is tax exempt. So if you want a tax write-off and you want to donate some money, click that link, let me know, and I'll make sure you have a receipt. Everything I have through DonorBox. Like I said, I do have my 501c3 status, so I have all my paperwork in line and my ducks in a row. Thank you. So there's that. But if you have any questions about how we can collaborate or wanting to know more about the nonprofit world or entrepreneurship, I mean, you have my Instagram pins. You can also shoot me an email, just Ariana Smith at motivate2inspire.org. Again, it's on my bio, so you don't have to remember it all now. But yeah.
Perfect. 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 Well, I appreciate you definitely for coming on here and giving us this good information on how we can start our nonprofits, what we need to look out for when we get into the nonprofit world. So we're going to end up in orange suits. So I definitely appreciate you for giving us that good information because I think that's
Yes.
one thing a lot of people kind of like. I feel like when a lot of people don't really know the ins and out of businesses, especially when it comes to that particular type of businesses where you're receiving
Yep.
money from the states and things like that, it's just like, yeah, yeah, you need to be on point with it. So yeah, I definitely
I
appreciate you for
agree.
giving us that information. And it's always amazing to talk to you. I'm definitely about to text you once we get off this live because I definitely need to tell you
Yes.
what I've been talking about. So I definitely appreciate you. I just want to thank
Absolutely.
everybody who joined us today. Make sure that you go check out Ariana's page. Make sure you donate, collab, whatever you need to do. Make sure you get in contact with her. I promise you would definitely, definitely won't be disappointed. Okay. All right. So
Thank you.
you have a great night. I'm finna text you, like I said. Everybody
Yep.
else, I hope y'all have a great night, great weekend, and I will see y'all tomorrow. Y'all have a good
Awesome.
one.
Bye.
See y'all later.